afternoon, everybody. My name's Paul Jewell. I'm the System and Development Manager for Western Power Distribution. Welcome to our West Midlands webinar for the Green Recovery Call for Evidence. Most of the session is really about questions that you've got for us, but to start, I'll just give you a little bit of background to WPD. I'll try and get through that reasonably quickly and then tell you what the Call of Evidence is about. So for those of us who know and have known us for a long time, we stretch from Land's End through to Lincolnshire. Land's End to Skegness and back again is our network area. We're concentrating this afternoon on the West Midlands bit, the dark green bit in the middle of that patch there. But you'll see from the numbers there, we've got a huge range of area to cover and lots of assets to cover. So that there's a lot that we do every day. You may know us as a distribution network operator. That role's changing slightly, but if you start with this, what you'll see with the arrows is that traditionally electricity came from centrally generated power from big power stations. It was moved across the UK by National Grid, and it then came to us. We own all the network between 132,000 volts and basically your front door. So we hand off at your electricity meter where you actually take your supply from your supplier. And just under 8 million customers in our area take a supply from us. Now, life is changing, net zero is coming, generation has already changed, and EVs and heat pumps are set to change. So what we see on our network now is that generation is being added into our network at different places, at different levels. And what that means, you'll see from the arrows on the top, is that electricity now flows in two directions. So as an organization, rather than just passively seeing electricity flow in one direction across our network, we're now beginning to manage and look after flows in multiple directions and try and predict and deal with those elements. And there's only going to be more and more low carbon technology as we move towards net zero in 2050. Heat pumps, electric vehicles, and the like will become more prevalent. So the first three boxes there are the things we do. The first three of keeping the supplies going, maintaining and fixing the network. They're very much the sort of traditional network operator roles. That's what we do for our existing assets to keep them in tip-top condition. The two on the right-hand side, connecting customers, is obviously key to us. Customers connect our network also to IDNO networks that might be connected to our network, but in any case, it's more customers and more demand on our network. And as I say, now that we've got generation and different power flows in our network, we're taking more steps to operate our system in a smart way. So let's get into the meat of what we want to talk about today. It is the Green Recovery Call for Evidence. It's industry-wide, so it's Ofgem supported, it's across the industry. That does mean that if you've got plans and projects outside of WPD's area, one of the other network operators will be doing a similar call. And the key thing for me in that first bullet is we're looking to unlock early investment. Ofgem have always been very cautious of us investing ahead of need. They want network operators to show a definite need before they invest in the network. Because we don't want to have stranded assets. We don't want to put network in advance and then find it's not being used. So what we're looking at is this early investment. This is where we take things. Now, we've got what we need to do is we need to look at how the network's being utilised, how the network is, where we could deliver solutions, and what value for money projects might bring to us. And this is now key into what you might need to do with the work that you come to us with. So what we are offering is 20 million on each of our licensed areas. So that's for investments between now and 2023. And it's quite key to point out that we're expecting to do this in that relatively short time. So if you have got projects which will be stretching out past 2023, while we'd love to hear about them, they're not the sort of projects that I think would be eligible for green recovery. We need plans that you've got for things that are happening in the next few years only. And what we're going to do with the money that we're offering is we are going to be building electricity infrastructure. So we will be building network ready for need, ready for projects that you've got, where we can see a benefit. And the benefit is key. It's low carbon. It's a green recovery. We're looking for low carbon benefits. So the also, at the bottom, it's quite important to note that the money that we're putting up is money that we would use to fund what might be the reinforcement part of a connection. We're not looking to pay for the whole thing. So customers will still have to pay for sole use assets, the connecting assets. I think all that really happens in the sense is that we bring the network closer to you within the green recovery program. Oops. So we've put together a map of areas that we think we want to invest in, and that's from our knowledge of networks and our scenario modeling that shows the areas of our network which need reinforcement. And very much the areas that are shown in green are areas where we can see reinforcement required at high voltages, at very high voltages. So what we'd also look at is projects at any part of our network which are more local. So maybe a local 11,000 volt piece of work within a town. It doesn't have to be in the green areas. As long as it's in WPD's area, then that's fine. And the last comment there, we'd like to hear from you. If you think some of those green areas that we've highlighted are wrong, then please tell us, because that will help. Now, this is the key thing for anybody that wants to make a submission. The first key thing on there is that the 19th of March is the deadline. The second key thing is the table on the right-hand side, because we're going to be looking at each of the projects that we get in, and we're going to be ticking off the criteria and seeing where it meets those criteria. The more criteria that can be evidenced, the better chance the project has of going forward. And there's things in there about our network. There's things about whether we're running active network management, or whether you've had quotations with reinforcement elements in them. But there's also things about more general green economy, local jobs, investment creation, other infrastructures, decarbonisation, or things that leave a greater output than the sum of their parts. So that there's more of that holistic thing in there as well. But as I say, this is going to be our criteria. The more things that you can tick off, the more likely your project will be to be taken through our process. As for a timeline, we're in that timeline now at the moment. We're in the response period, the stakeholder engagement period. So you have until the 19th of March. So you've got that time to get your projects and your ideas for projects into us. We then have a small amount of time from March through to May, where all the DNOs come together with Ofgem, and we work out exactly what we're going to take forwards. And then mid-May, we'll get a short list of sites. And as I say, because this is work that needs to be completed by 2023, as soon as those projects are ready to go, we'll make a start on them. So that's the final slide, I think, really, before we get one that asks to open things up for questions. I think what we're asking you to do is go off and have a look on our website, look at the questionnaire, and look to see whether you've got projects that pull together. Ideas here, share with us those ideas, but also from a stakeholder engagement point of view, if there's anything that you think we've missed generally, then by all means come back to us. There's different places that you can get to us via the website, via email, or by paper if you want to post things to us. And the closing date, as I say, is the 19th of March. As I say, I think the next slide is just any questions. Yep. So I'll happily leave the presentation there, and I think we can start thinking about questions.
Hi there, Paul. Hi there, everyone. It's Michael Clark from Western Power Distribution's Corporate Communications team. Please do keep any questions coming through via the Q&A box. We've got up to half an hour now to go through any questions. Just to let you all know that we will be putting up the slides from this webinar, and the webinars themselves will be on the Green Recovery website by around about mid next week. So if you go to westernpower.co.uk/green-recovery, all the information will be there, but we will be emailing you all with all of this information as well. We'll get through as many questions as we can, but any questions that we can't quite get to because of time, what we will be looking to do is answer all of your questions and field those questions back to you, and also publish those on the Green Recovery pages as well. So Paul, the first question that's come through has been from Tom Curtis. Can we submit supplemental documents with maps, plans, etc., as well, as the form suggests only 400 words per query?
Yeah, the limit of 400 words per query was really for us to make sure that people didn't write huge documents. We wanted to get sort of the punchy detail of the words that go with an application. But yeah, if there are drawings, plans and other supporting information that can be sent in, there's no reason why that can't be used to support it. I think that the key thing to mention, though, is most of our assessment will be done from what's on those pages, so that it's fair for everybody.
Okay. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Paul. Next questions come through from Jack Hayho. Can we put forward projects that have already had a quote from yourselves, or do they need to be unknown projects?
Yeah, you can definitely put forward projects that have had a quote. In fact, if you've had a quote that includes reinforcement, that's one of the criteria that we would score against, because it shows that you've got a requirement in an area, and we would need to reinforce the network to support it. I think the only caveat of that, of things that have already had a quote, is that if you have had a quote and accepted it, the bad news is that we can't reverse that. So they wouldn't be eligible to sort of be taken down and then reinstated as green recovery projects.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Next question's from Alex Pearson. Thanks for sending in the question, Alex. Will you be sharing a list of the sites that you're expecting to receive interest from?
A list of the sites that we're expecting to receive interest from. So that we've got a long list of sites that we've come up with. Keith might be able to help me about the mechanics of this. I think when we get our final list, we will be sharing that with people. Keith, I'm not really sure, to be honest.
I'm not sure. We'll go through a certain amount of internal discussion on it, and then I believe I'll probably bounce that back to yourself, Michael. I'm not sure whether how much of that we would obviously publish in the end. I'd hope that that should all be open. We are very open about where we invest in our network. So my hope would be that absolutely, once we pull a final list together, I hope we would be able to publish that with you.
Yeah. I mean, first things first, we've got the green recovery map on the site at the moment, which has identified the areas where we're envisaging investment to happen, but obviously that's not set in stone, as Paul's already mentioned. So any thoughts that anyone's got, any potential projects, then put them forward. I think in terms of list of sites, what we have on the website at the moment is upcoming investment schemes. So I would expect that once we have decided where the investment is going to go, then as we plan in those investment projects, those will appear on the investment map. So they should come in time. Right, next question. the common question that's been coming through, Paul, is can you explain what is meant by shovel ready?
Okay, yeah. I think shovel. I must admit, I don't like the term shovel ready, but there we go. We'll put my likes to one side. Shovel ready is jobs that are sort of ready to go, because when we get to May and when we've decided which jobs we're going to invest in, the issue for us is making sure that we can get the money spent before 2023. So if you had a job that maybe had 5 years worth of work, then it wouldn't be eligible. We're looking for jobs that we could start later this year and we could complete in a couple of years. And that's basically to fund in with the way that Ofgem have allowed the network operators to support this investment, in that it has to happen during this regulatory period that we've got, which finishes in 2023. So yeah, a job that's sort of ready, I think, is my view, something which you've got to a position where you would be thinking of starting work on site soon.
Perfect. Paul, the next questions come from Howard Mapperley. Can you give us a brief run through of the process that follows after the 19th of March?
Yeah, the process that follows is we will take all of the things that we get from people and we will map them against the criteria that are in that matrix that I showed you on the slide. But that's also in the call for evidence, so you've got it there to refer to. We'll then come up with a list of projects which we think we can consider. There's then a little bit more work that needs to be done to make sure those projects are, if you like, shovel ready, to use that phrase. We would be looking at how easy it would be for us to deliver the reinforcement works that are required. So we'll do our own assessment of whether or not wayleave or planning permission issues might slow up the works for us, or see how we can fit it with other work that we've got in our programme. And once we've got a list of schemes that we know hit the criteria and give us our top however many, we will then move on and start looking in more detail at the ones where there wouldn't be any WPD issues in commencing them and achieving them within that time period.
Thanks, Paul. Next question is from Shamala Evans. What level of detail is required as part of the project submission?
Yeah, Shamala, as much detail as you can, but within the context that we have put a word count on the document. So try and get as much information in there as you can, because that's the document that we will be judging you against, in effect. And it's all about green recovery. So think about, I think it's the right hand of the 3 columns on that matrix. Think about the things that are societal benefits. Think about whether or not this is something which would support communities, support investment, support jobs, as well as providing a net zero benefit. Try and explain to us where our element of doing some reinforcement work is the catalyst for other investment and other things to happen.
Next question, Paul, very nicely follows on from that. How is the viability assessed for each development? The form primarily aims at the benefits. I can't see financial viability, business case, etc. included.
Yeah, that's because we are looking at the benefits directly. The financial, I won't say the financial viability, but the financial size isn't a particular issue for us. Whether we spend our 20 million on some big projects or lots of small projects, that's not a problem. So really we're looking purely at the benefits. We did, when we were trying to put this together as an industry, wondered whether you could work out a sort of a pounds per megawatt of energy figure or a pounds per ton of CO2 figure, but it all got rather clunky. So we've steered clear from that. We're just looking for the benefits.
Great. Cover off a question that's come through a few times in the webinar so far, Paul. Does the funding cover any works on the customer side of the Western Power connection?
No, it doesn't cover anything on the customer side. So everything that you need to do, if you like, behind your meter is definitely up to you. And also worth pointing out that it won't pay for new physical connections. It pays for the infrastructure that can support connections. So, for example, if it was, say, a housing estate that is changing from being gas heated to being electrically heated, as a development, whilst we might pay for uprated mains and we might pay for uprated substations to support that site, we wouldn't be paying for the service cables because that is the sort of customer connection part of the works.
Great. Thanks to everybody for all their questions, and please do keep them coming in. The next question is from Brett Willers. Would the options include upgrading existing infrastructure, e.g. replacing 6.6 kV networks, it might mean 66 kV networks, with higher voltage infrastructure?
Yeah, no, it would. Yeah, we do have some 6.6 as well, Michael. Okay. So they're teaching you something this afternoon.
I know, yes, I'm learning as we go.
So yes, it definitely, it's not all new connections. It would include infrastructure upgrades. So if there were areas where Brett knew that we've got 6.6 kV networks and we've got capacity issues, making us aware of the net zero aspirations of that area to support us putting together a reinforcement scheme would be a valid thing to do.
There's reasons why I'm asking the questions and not answering them, Paul. Right, another question. Are projects that have already received public money through schemes such as the Getting Building Fund be in scope?
Yes, no reason why not. We are just looking at the electricity connection and the electricity infrastructure. So there's no reason why a scheme can't layer multiple funding sources. And there's a comment on that little matrix, and it's something along the lines of that the scheme's benefit is more than the sum of its parts. And I'd say that if you can demonstrate that for funding mechanisms as well, then by all means do. So there's no issue with projects that have other funding streams.
Another question from Rice Sadler. Are there any plans for similar schemes post 2023?
There isn't any plan for us to do a call for evidence in this sense, but I think what this opens is a slightly new way of Ofgem looking at how we build our network. We've always managed to build a network by modeling predicted demand and making the network available when it's required. That becomes a little bit more difficult when you're looking at networks flowing in two directions and you're looking at local generation and more renewable power. But I think when Ofgem will go is they will probably put this style of stakeholder engagement into the requirements for us for our next price control review to show that the reinforcements that we're putting in place are led by customers and stakeholders. So yeah, I think that whilst there won't be a specific scheme like this, I think this level of stakeholder engagement is going to go into the future. And a little bit of an advert for one of my colleagues, Ben Godfrey, and the network strategy team. They do the distribution energy scenarios every year, which show our predictions out to 2030 and beyond. And we'd more than happily take feedback from local authorities and anybody to change our assessment based on what they know locally.
Great, thanks, Paul. Tim Yeo has asked, £20 million won't necessarily go that far. What happens to all those projects that don't get selected? Will there be a subsequent round?
Yeah, I think I've answered the second bit, Tim, in what I just said. I think it becomes more of our sort of business as usual, business planning. And with my tongue sort of in my cheek, 20 million, it won't go that far, but it will go further than if we didn't have the 20 million. And I think this is very much about Ofgem taking steps into a world where network operators are allowed to invest ahead of definite known need. And there is a risk from Ofgem's point of view that 20 million per license is there's 14 licenses in the UK, so there's a lot of money that is available across the UK, and Ofgem would run the risk, if they just let us spend everything we wanted, that we would be putting up bills to customers and perhaps not spending things in the right place. I'm an engineer at heart, Tim. I'd love to spend more money everywhere, but we have to make sure that we do it in an equitable way to protect all of our customers.
If I can maybe add something to that, yes, absolutely. It is a lot of money, but it is limited in the sense of an electricity network. But by all means, there is so much value in understanding the schemes going on throughout the DNO area. So my team is responsible for coming up with the reinforcement plans across the West Midlands. As may have been mentioned already, we are currently drafting our next regulatory plan for our spend over the next few years. Hopefully some of this information coming through can help my team sort of narrow down exactly where this investment may be needed in the future. So to a certain extent, we do, it's a bit of a trend analysis. We do have to give our best guess at where work will have to be in the future. But obviously, if the more information we get from yourselves, from the stakeholders, the more we can sort of formulate exactly where we think that need is going to be in the future. So yeah, I wouldn't necessarily, if you don't believe it'd be part of this scheme in particular, there's so much value in sending that information through to us.
Thanks, Keith. Next questions come through from Coral Tilling. Regarding mass heat pumps for domestic properties, if we're able to identify areas of social housing that will have heat pumps in the future, from now until after 2023, would this be a possible scheme, as this will be a catalyst to this happening earlier?
Yeah, no reason why not. When we lay an asset now, it will probably have a 50-year life, so anything we're putting in the ground is definitely going to be there after we've hit net zero. We could quite happily invest in the local network that was needed to support the heat pumps that haven't been installed yet, if that's the sort of answer to the question. So whilst the works that you might need to do as a landlord or as a house developer to fit heat pumps might not have been finished, we're quite happy to go and put the investment in place. There is that caveat that if you're looking too far off into the future, Ofgem might say, well, we're not really investing wisely. But I would have thought that if the works get completed from a customer point of view shortly after 2023 or through the next few years after that, I wouldn't have an issue with us laying cables ready for that.
Great, we've got loads more questions coming through, so thank you everybody. Gary Timmins has asked, will consideration be given to circuits stroke areas with known voltage constraints?
Yes, there will, and if nobody comes up with anything, I can't imagine that's going to be the case, but if nobody comes up with anything, we would revert back to our plans for reinforcement, which is sort of the areas that we shaded green on the maps. And Keith was nodding. It's the work that his team does anyway. We just bring some of that forward. But if there are better schemes that can deliver more benefits for our customers, we'll do those instead.
Wonderful. Tom Curtis, thanks for your question, Tom. If your scheme is located, if your scheme is located adjacent to new other shovel-ready schemes, is it advisable to make a joint application to demonstrate the additional benefits of the specific WPD investment rather than seeing it as two separate applications?
Yeah, I think definitely, Tom. And I think depending on who your neighbour is and how they work, they may or may not want to do a joint application with you. But what I would suggest, if there's an area of reinforcement and network investment that you and your neighbour knows will benefit both of you from a sort of town development point of view, then cross-reference it on individual applications if you make them separately. We really want to see the bigger picture of this. So we'd rather see a benefit in an area that we know supports lots of different incentives.
Thanks, Paul. Howard Mapley has got in touch to ask, are you likely to spread the £20 million across as many projects as possible, or will you be focusing on a few large projects?
I'd like us to do a bit of everything, Howard. If no suggestions came forward, then it will be big, expensive projects, because that's the ones that Keith and his team identify for our backbone network. So I think if we were looking at projects that might rebuild extra high voltage overhead lines or replace transformers at major substations, that they're great, but they'd soon soak up the 20 million. I'd like to spend some of the 20 million maybe putting distribution substations at the end of people's streets, or overlaying cables in local areas, doing a bit of a town centre upgrade. So hopefully we can do a mix of those projects.
Perfect. Question that's been commonly asked so far, Paul, is funding only available in those areas marked in green on the green recovery map?
No, it's not. The areas marked green are the areas where we believe that our scenario modelling shows that the network will become weakest first. But a lot of that modelling isn't done down to the very granular level of the substation at the end of the street that might feed a few hundred properties. So that there's definitely scope for schemes at that lower level anywhere in WPD's area to be put forward. Another question's been asked by a few people, Paul. They may well have multiple projects that they want to provide evidence for. Would WPD rather them send it as one submission or as individual submissions? I think individual submissions. Keith's going to be the person that's probably in charge of reviewing these when they come in, so I might defer to Keith to see what he says. I think individual submissions, and my view is just keep sending them in and give Keith more to do, but that's maybe me just being uncharitable.
Yeah, absolutely. Whatever is easiest to send in. It'll obviously be collated by our teams and through to myself, who collated more, sort of identify essentially what schemes we can deliver to have the biggest impact on as many different submissions as we can, or areas of network which we've already identified may have restrictions which are holding back these sort of developments. But absolutely, no preference. As whatever way is easiest for the information to flow into the team, we're happy to take it.
Thanks, Keith. Another question that's come through is they've got an application in at the moment. If we get an offer and then you upgrade the network, will the price go down?
Yeah, if you haven't accepted your offer and you were then re-quoted, the price could go down if we've reinforced the network. I'll put a few caveats into that as well. Depending on the network that you're in, it may be that there are other people in the queue. So by not accepting your offer, you might lose your place in the queue and you might lose capacity, so the cost will go up anyway. What I would suggest is that if you have an open offer, I'd refer back to the planner that sent you that open offer to find out what the situation is on the network and whether there's any risks or benefits in either moving now or waiting.
Great. Questions come through about some potential projects that might not necessarily be ready in the next 2 years, but will be ready for beyond 2 years. Do we want to hear about them and to take them into account as part of our planning or not?
Yeah, I think it's like the question we had about heat pumps and whether the development would be finished. I think if somebody was planning the rollout of infrastructure by say 2025, and that was a defined and fixed requirement, if we knew about it and there was merit within this funding and we could get the work done by 2023, we'd get on and do it. The fact that the final benefit wasn't realised for another couple of years afterwards isn't an issue for us.
Perfect. Probably got a couple more minutes, so anybody who wants to send in their questions, I advise you to do it now. But as I have said, if we don't get to them, or you want to pose them afterwards, then please do send them through to WPD Green Recovery at westernpower.co.uk. Paul,
I think,
oh, sorry, go on, Keith.
Sorry, I was going to say, I've noticed a few questions coming in about what type of works this should cover. So this will not fund any sole use assets, so any connection assets for the scheme you're providing. It is only to unlock the capacity upstream on our distribution network on the higher voltages. So it's not for completing of works directly into your site. That will still be chargeable to yourselves or land user. We're just trying to facilitate opening up that capacity upstream.
Thanks for that, Keith. Another question that we had from the webinars previously, Paul, that I think will be useful to ask here is, in this scenario where there is 10 megawatts export import capacity at the nearest substation, but the project needs 50 megawatts, would the network be reinforced to accommodate only the extra 40 megawatts or possibly more?
That depends on what other information we've got for other scenarios that we've got. I think there's a couple of things on that. But the first thing is that our equipment and transformers only come in a limited range of sizes. So often you don't actually just reinforce to what's required, you reinforce to the next size up. And a lot of the work that Keith's team does is assessing whether or not the next size up is the right thing, or should we jump 2 or 3 sizes on the basis of what might be coming in the next 10 or 20 years. So it would be unlikely that we would be so granular as to just provide an upgrade that exactly met what was required. We'd normally be looking further ahead and providing capacity back into the network.
Thanks, Paul. Probably got time for a couple of questions. One from Anonymous here. Is this investment bid suitable for electric vehicle charge points in residential areas?
I think if you are aware from information you've got from us, or if you've had quotes and you know that the charge points that you want to put in a residential area will attract significant reinforcement, then yeah, not a problem at all. I think it's about finding the scale of how you do that. And I think if I had to sort of just generalize, I think a project that needs a substation in a car park to provide hub charging in that car park area is probably a project that would fit for us. A project that just needs cables run down the street for on-street parking is less so. And the reason why is that a new substation at 11,000 volts or works higher back up on that network are works which we would charge reinforcement to an end customer for. Already, if you're a single domestic customer and you want to fit an electric vehicle charge point, the work on the cable in your street, the low voltage works, are socialized anyway. So I think, think of a substation's worth of capacity. The answer is yes. If it's odd charge points down the street, it's not as likely, but put your bid in around it and see what you can make of it with the criteria that are on that matrix.
Thanks to everybody for sending their questions through. We've probably got time for one more, but as I say again, all the questions, we are going to collect them all from all the 4 regional webinars that we've held over the last couple of days. So we will work through all of the questions and provide answers to all the attendees from the webinars and put them on our website, and hopefully we'll be looking to do that by middle of next week. Final question, Paul, is from Tim Yare. Would having multiple requests for the same project, e.g. different project partners, hold greater weight?
No, I think if your project partners for exactly the same connection or exactly the same load, then make one multiple application. Yeah, we talked earlier about neighbouring sites, and I think neighbouring sites you can go one way or the other, but I don't really want to see lots of applications for the same specific project, because we do end up getting in a pickle over that. We've done it previously with renewable generation, where you'd get an application from a landowner, a renewable developer, and a third party as well, all for the same site. So I think if it's the same connection and the same work, make one application. But as I say, if it's neighbouring bits of work that are separate, then certainly reference those together.
That's great. Thanks, Paul. I think that's probably about all we've got time for the questions. So I'll just hand back over to you, Paul, to wrap up.
Yeah, Tim's just put a chat to say thank you for all your comments. I think I'd thank all of you on the webinar, because the only way we can give you useful comments is if you come up with useful questions to get us started. So I found it really useful. Hopefully it is. And I think I'll just finish by wishing you luck with getting through our form and putting the right information in. And then we'll see what you come up with. Thank you.